The Trunk Lady by Ray Bradbury. Johnny Menlo kicked his shoes and sat down hard on the bottom of the attic stairs. His teacher, his special private tutor, was not coming after all, so he wouldn't have someone in the house all to himself. Downstairs, the party was running full blast. The sounds of it came up mockingly. The laughter, the cocktail shakers clinking, the music. Johnny thought he had got away from its sounds, sitting way up here, so lonely. His teacher was supposed to have come today. She hadn't. Mom and Dad, so busy drinking with people, gave Johnny the kind of look you give your shadow. Johnny retreated farther up the stairs into the complete musty asylum of the abandoned attic. Even up here, the dust and warm afternoon quiet was rustled by the party noises from below. Johnny glanced around. There were 4 trunks sitting under veils of webs in the dim corners. A sunbeam fell through a small, dirty window, lighted things for Johnny's curious blue eyes. The trunk in the north corner, for instance, it was always locked, the key hidden somewhere. The hasps were down now, but the brass tongue in the middle was flipped up, unlocked. Johnny walked to the trunk and pried the hasps open. He pulled the lid up. Suddenly, the attic was very cold. She was inside. Curled up her body was, young, pretty. Her slender face was like chalk etched against the blackboard of her hair. Johnny gasped, but not too loudly. He held onto the trunk rim. Only her perfume was still alive. She looked as lonely and abandoned as he felt. He sympathized. Attics are places for things neglected and forgotten. Death had apparently come through suffocation. Someone had slammed the heavy, airtight lid down upon her curled loveliness. Her hand was like a white fragment of it against her flimsy pink cocktail dress. A moment later, he found the bald wad of paper on the floor. It was only part of a note, with her writing on it. "You've got to make it up to me, the way I've been treated. It shouldn't be difficult. I could be Johnny's teacher. That would explain my presence in the house to everyone. Ellie." He looked at her quiet beauty. It seemed as if she might have fallen asleep during the cocktail party and had been carried here, and the lid slammed down upon her while in slumber. The attic dimness moved in about Johnny, shaking him, then drawing out, leaving him numbed and saying, "Are you my teacher? Are you the one I was going to have for myself alone? But they killed you? Why should anyone kill my teacher?" Another thought rustled the first away. He, Johnny Menlo, of the Society Menlos, had found a body, hadn't he? Sure, his eyes widened. Mom and Dad would have to notice him now, more often. Why, even Grandma would quit playing chess all day with Uncle Flinny, choke on her brandy, stare at him through thick glasses and cry, "My God, child, your snooping finally came to a profit, did it?" Sure, Johnny blinked rapidly, his heart pounding. Cousin William might even faint at the news. He, Johnny Menlo, had found the body. Pictures in the papers of himself instead of Mother beaming out of the society columns. Hiding the note in his pocket, Johnny took one last look at the pretty lashes and the pink lips and the dark black hair of the trunk lady. He closed the lid on her sleeping. He'd scream. Yes, at the top of the grand stairs, scream till the sky fell down and the party with it. Scream. His screaming wasn't bad at all. Down the stairs, across the hall, making a path with his screaming through the startled ranks of people, Johnny reached Mother's glittering cocktail gown and held onto it very tightly. Johnny, why are you downstairs? What's the matter? I told you." Mother's girl face looked down over the glitter. He grabbed another fistful of spangles. He yelled it. "Mom, there's a body in the attic!" Like faces in a football stadium, the faces watching them. Mother stiffened and relaxed. "Let go my dress, darling. You'll get it dirty. Look at your hands, cobwebs and all. Now run up to your room like a good boy." She patted his head. "But, Mom!" he wailed. "There's a body!" "Good Lord," someone murmured, "just like his father." Johnny spun angrily. "You shut up! There is so a body!" Mother didn't see him. She looked at her guest, and all Johnny could see was her lovely swan-like throat, the firm chin with the pulse beating under it, her fingers fixing the chestnut shine of hair swept up from her ears. Please forgive Johnny, she was saying. Children are so imaginative, aren't they? Her chin came down. There was no light in her blue eyes. You'd better go upstairs, Johnny. Oh, but Mom! His world was crashing. The spangles slipped from between his fingers. He suddenly hated everyone at the party looking at him. You heard what your mother said, General. That was Dad's resonant voice, and it meant the fight was lost. Johnny jerked around, shot one last glare at the people, and ran upstairs, tears coming into his eyes. He twisted the brass knob of Grandma's door. She sat playing chess with Uncle Flinny before the great glaring window. Sunlight glinted off her glasses. She hardly looked up. Pardon me, Granny, but... She shifted her cane against her thin knee. Well, there's a body in the attic, and nobody will believe me. Go away, Johnny. But, he cried, there's a body. We know it. Now run, get Cousin William a bottle of cognac. Scat, go. Johnny went and got the cognac from the wine pantry, rapped on Cousin William's door, and thought he heard indrawn breath behind the paneling. Then Cousin William whispered quickly, Who's there? Cognac. Oh, fine. Cousin William's weak-chinned, rabbity face poked out, his soft hand starting after the offered liquor. Thank God. Now go away and let me get drunk. The door slammed, but before it did, Johnny got a brief glimpse of the cluttered, disorderly interior of Cousin William's designing room, the mannequins standing stiff around with brilliant silk-draped cut fixed to them, watercolor sketches of capes, hats, suits thumbtacked to the plaster walls, bright heaps of woolens, threaded spools and all. The door cut it off, locked it in, and Cousin William was nervously attending his cognac behind the shining knob. Johnny eyed the hall phone, his anger simmering. He thought of Mom and Dad dancing, Uncle Flinny and Grandma playing their eternal chess, Cousin William drinking, and himself a stranger in this great old echoing house. He snatched up the phone. Give me the police station. Another deep voice cut in on the operators. Hang up the phone, Johnny. Hang up and go to bed. Dad's very resonant and cultured voice. Johnny hung up slowly. So this was his reward for finding a body. He sat and cried with frustration. He felt like the lady in the trunk, the lid slammed in his face by 5 people. Slammed! He was twisting in bed when Uncle Flinny softly opened the door and poked his curly, soft-haired, big head into the room. His eyes were round, black, gentle, peaceful-looking. He came in with slow, soft movements, sat on the edge of the chair beside the bed like a very quiet little bird. He folded his bird-like fingers. Since you're retiring early, he said, I thought I'd better come tell your bedtime story early too, yes? Johnny felt himself too old for stories. Being raised in such an adult house with few contacts with children, and having an advanced education with such mature talk and mature people around, he felt himself far above that bedtime stories, but he resigned himself, sighed, and said, Okay, Uncle Flinny, go ahead, shoot. Uncle Flinny held onto his neatly pressed black trousers at the knees, as if they'd explode, and slowly pieced out his tale. Well, once there was a young woman who was very beautiful. Uh-oh. Johnny'd heard this story 1,000 times before. He fidgeted. A body in the attic, and he had to listen to this. And, continued Uncle Flinny, this beautiful young girl fell in love with and married a young knight. They lived happily for years until one day a dark one kidnapped the beautiful woman and ran away with her. Uncle Flinny looked sad and old. And then the husband came home, prompted Johnny. Uncle Flinny didn't hear him at all. He just kept talking in a funny, soft monotone. The husband chased the dark one into a dark land, but no matter how hard he pleaded or tried to catch up with the dark one, he never could. His wife was gone forever. Forever. Uncle Flinny's breathing was uneven, harsh. His eyes glowed dark, round. His lips trembled. He wasn't himself. He was someone else, off 1,000,000 miles in that dark land. He seized his knees tighter and bent over them. But the husband searched and searched, vowing that someday he would find and kill the dark one, and wonder of wonders, he did. He struck the dark one down, but oh, God above, after striking the dark one, he found that somehow, The Dark One looked like his beautiful wife, and he found to his horror that he himself was growing darker and darker. The end. Johnny hoped there'd be no more. Uncle Flinny sat, sighing, in the atmosphere he'd built from the story. He'd forgotten Johnny was a part of the room. His hands were shaking, and he was out of breath. He just sat there. Johnny shivered for no reason. He knew. Thanks very much, Uncle Flinny, he said. Thanks for the swell story. Uncle Flinny turned blind eyes. Huh? He relaxed, recognizing Johnny. Oh, yes, anytime at all. You sure get steamed up, Uncle Flinny. Uncle Flinny quietly opened the door. Good night, Johnny. Oh, Uncle! Yes? Johnny stopped himself. Never mind. Uncle Flinny shuffled out. The door closed gently. Johnny bounced furiously on the springs. The things I've had to do the last few days to keep this family happy. Listen to Uncle Flinny. Wait on Grandma. Get out of the way of Mother. Obey Father and keep Cousin William drunk. Gah! He was tired of them all. For a change, why not some attention for himself? He could hear the party continuing downstairs. Slipping from bed, he listened against the door. In the next hour, he heard all varieties of feet upon the stairs, like heartbeats in the house. The crisp, snapping moves of Grandma and her pert cane, feeling the layers of attitude, the shuffle of Uncle Flinny, the even, long, and easy stride of Dad, the glide of Mother, the nervous, uneasy tripping of Cousin William. And there were voices talking, some arguing, some urging, others hysterical, mixed. Dad calm, Mother criticizing, Grandma stern, Cousin William whimpering, Uncle Flinny quiet. Once or twice the attic door creaked. No one even came near Johnny's room. The party still existed downstairs, unaware of all this badinage. Night was coming swiftly on, with an autumn chill. Finally, it was quiet again. Johnny hurried up the dark, dusty stairs into the attic, heart beating quickly. He'd show them. The trunk was not heavy, strangely enough. One could easily tip it toward the stairs, and the stairs led down to the landing. One more push from the landing and down. Down into the living room. Yes, they'd have to believe him now. Johnny tipped the trunk. People were talking. Music was playing on the radio phonograph. Mom and Dad mingled with the bright swarm, flames about which social moths beat their sophisticated wings. It was in the very midst of these things that Johnny's small voice made some sort of declaration from atop the hall staircase. He yelled loudly, "Mom! Dad!" Everybody turned and looked as at a reception. The woman came down the stairs. Somebody had to scream. It sounded almost like Cousin William, but everybody watched, falling back as the woman came down the stairs in her filmy cocktail dress. Well, she didn't exactly come down. She rolled over and over, arms limp, legs limp, head bobbing, hair flailing in a dark whip, around and down, softly nudging the steps, jointless, boneless, and lifeless. When she reached the bottom, Johnny was right after her. "I told you, Mother, Dad, I found her again, I found her." He'd always and forever remember Mother's face in that moment, the way she said his name, "Johnny," and the way she struck him across the face. Someone said, "Call the police." Someone else had the phone, ticking it. Dad's face was like a wet gray calm. Suddenly old and tired, Johnny fell back from Mother's blow, holding to the banister. He thought, she's never hit me before. Never before. Always kind and good, thoughtless at times maybe, but she never went and hit me before. Then it happened. Everybody began laughing. Somebody pointed at the body. Their faces got red and they laughed. Dad laughed too, with everything in his eyes. "I'll be damned," someone said. "So that's the body the child found upstairs." "A mannequin," someone declared. "Of course, a store window dummy. Easy to see how a child might think it a body." Again, laughter, lots of it. "A mannequin." The laughter grew and grew upon itself. Johnny, trembling, crept and bent and touched the outflung hand, pulled away, touched it again, felt tremblingly the hard, cold plastic. "That's not the body," he said, looking up bewildered. He shook his head, moving back. That's not the body at all, he said. The other body was different, warmish and soft. It was a real woman. Johnny! Daddy had stopped smiling. Mother clenched a fist with white knuckles. Johnny said, just the same. It's not the one. He began to cry. Tears came, as on the windshield of a car in a storm, erasing the world in wet portions. Just the same, she was dead and she wasn't made of plastic. The house was full of sounds late that night, people talking in locked rooms, arguments. Once he thought he heard Cousin William sobbing. Feet climbed stairs. Lights clicked on and off. Finally, everyone was in bed, and Johnny sat up, throwing back the covers. That clicking was Cousin William double-locking his door. Why? Because someone or something was walking around in the house? Johnny started. His doorknob was turning. The door pushed open a few inches. Someone was standing there in the darkness looking in. A heart is an erratic thing, like mercury. It scurries all over a person's insides. Johnny's heart was like mercury. The door remained open. The shadow remained standing in the doorway, staring, looking in. Johnny said nothing. Then very matter-of-factly, the shadow withdrew and the door closed, rapping the lock home hard. Johnny threw his breath out and lay trembling on the door. Pressure from outside. A moment later, from the withdrawn shadow could not force the bolt. Johnny listened. The shadow went away. Very weakly, Johnny returned to bed, trembling. Mom, Mom, he said to himself, are you mad at me for making a scene before all of society? Would you kill me, Mom? Was there something about the trunk lady and Dad, something you didn't like? And did you kill her because of it? Now, when I come around in the way, what will you do to me? Oh, Mom, it can't be you. Dad, he said the same way. You made me hang up the phone. Are you afraid it will get Are you afraid it will get out too? Afraid of your business, your money, your reputation at the club, huh? Dad, was that you standing in the door, silent and dark and thinking? You've been my favorite in the family, but now today, you're so quiet, and you don't even look at me. Cousin William, he could have changed the bodies, tried to fool poor Johnny. He could have put one of the mannequins in the trunk instead. Was she Cousin William's girlfriend? Was she causing trouble somehow? Or was Cousin William just afraid for his reputation? Him and his mannequins, and his famous expensive dresses for expensive women. Was it him twisting the doorknob a moment ago? Maybe it was Uncle Flinny, with his bedtime stories and his quiet ways. He loved Mother so much, his sister. He'd do anything for her or Dad or Grandma or Cousin William. Would he kill for her or Dad or the others to keep this house whole, intact, and untouched? Grandma played her cold game of chess day by day and drank her brandy neat. Her whole life was keeping the house moving together. Her whole life was society and position and taste. What if someone came into the house and tried to do all the ordering instead of her? What would she do to her? All of them. All of them. Johnny sank, shivering, back on the springs. A woman walked into a big mothballed old mansion like this, and suddenly everyone was afraid. Just one woman. On the table beside his bed, Johnny groped and found the note he discovered in the attic dust. He felt of it and read it again in his mind. You've got to make it up to me the way I've been treated. It shouldn't be difficult. I could be Johnny's teacher. That would explain my presence in the house to everyone. Ellie. Johnny turned over. Ellie, my teacher, where are you now? He asked the darkness, lonely and resting in Cousin William's studio with all the other stuffed mannequins, playing chess with Grandma, only not moving, in the cold, dark basement, like the wine casks put away for all the years, somewhere in this big house tonight, but maybe not tomorrow, unless I find you before then. There was a huge backyard with many acres to it. Fruit trees, a flower garden, the swimming pool, the bathhouse, servants' quarters, immediately behind the big house, sunlight caught between a row of sycamore trees, and a high green fence that shielded all this from the street. There was an oak tree to dangle from in the afternoon, and a policeman who walked his beat. just under that tree on the sidewalk, beyond the fence. Johnny climbed and waited. The policeman walked below. Johnny rattled the leaves. "Hi, son." The policeman looked up. "Better watch out, you'll fall." "I don't care," said Johnny. "We got a dead lady in our house, and everybody keeps it secret." The policeman made a smile. "You have you?" Johnny shifted himself. "I found her in a trunk. Somebody killed her. I tried to call the police last night, but Dad wouldn't let me. I tipped the trunk over and she fell downstairs, but she turned out to be a wax doll. It wasn't the lady after all." "So," the policeman chuckled, enjoying it. "But the other lady was real," insisted Johnny. "What other lady?" "The first one I found. Cousin William's a dress designer. He changed bodies. You should have seen everybody at breakfast this morning, trying to be happy like in the movies, but they can't fool me. They're not happy. Mother looks tired, and she's real touchy. I wonder how long they can go around like this without yelling." The policeman scowled. "Honest to God, you sound just like my kid. Him and his Buck Rogers disintegrators and his comic books. Honest to God, it's a crime what they give the younger generation to read. Ruin their minds with it. Killing, corpses, nah. But it's true." "See you later," said the policeman, and walked on. Johnny clung there, and the tree trembled in the wind. Then he dropped down across the fence and gave chase. "You've got to come look. They'll take her away if you don't. Then nobody'll ever find her." The policeman was patient. "Look, little boy, I can't go nowhere without no warrant. How do I know you're not lying?" He was joking now. "You've just got to believe me, that's all." The policeman stuck out his hand. "Here." Johnny took it. The policeman walked. "Where are we going?" asked Johnny. "To see your mother." "No!" Johnny squirmed frantically. "That won't help. She'll hate me for it. She'll lie about it." The policeman firmly escorted him around front and thumbed the bell. First the maid, and then Mother was at the door, her face pale as milk, her lips a red smear against the white. Her pompadour was a little toppled over. There were blue pouches under her suddenly dull eyes. "Johnny!" "Better keep him inside, ma'am." The policeman touched his cap. "He'll get hurt running in the street." "Thank you, officer." The officer looked at her and then at Johnny. Johnny started to speak, but he could only sob. 2 tears ran down his cheeks as the door closed, shutting the officer outside. Mother didn't say anything to Johnny, not a word. She just stood there, lost and white, twisting her fingers. That was all. Hours later in the day, Johnny wrote it all down upon a nickel tablet of paper. Everything he knew about the trunk lady, everything he knew about Cousin William, Mom, Dad, Uncle Flinny, Grandma. Wetting his pencil, Johnny put it out in lines like this. "The lady in the trunk loved Dad. Dad killed her when she came to the house." Johnny pouted over that one. Either that or Mom killed her. Long years of viewing motion picture murders went through Johnny's mind. Then, of course, Grandma or Uncle Flinny could have killed her because their authority and security was threatened. "Yeah," Johnny scribbled away. "Let's see now. And Cousin William, maybe it was his woman friend after all." Johnny sort of hoped it was. He wasn't very partial to Cousin W. Maybe there was something in Grandma's past, or Uncle Flinny's. Now, how about... "Johnny?" Grandma's voice. Johnny put away his pad. Grandma came in the door and guided Johnny out through the hall and into her room, using her cane as a nervous prod. She seated him before the chessboard and nodded at the pale pieces. "Those are yours. Mine are black." She thought it over, eyes closed. "Mine are always black." "We can't play," Johnny announced. "2 of your black pieces are missing." He pointed. She looked. "Uncle Flinny again. He's always taking some of my players. Always and forever. We'll play anyway. I'll use what I have. Move." She jabbed a skinny finger. "Where's Uncle Flinny?" "Watering the garden. Move," she ordered. Her eyes watched his fingers in their path. She leaned forward slowly over the shining pieces. "We're all good people, Johnny. We led a good life these 20 years in this house. You've been in it only part of that 20. We never asked for no trouble. Don't make us any, Johnny." He sat there, a fly buzzed against the large window far away. Below, water ran from a faucet. "I don't want no trouble," he said. The chessboard blurred and ran away like colored water. Dad looked so white and funny at breakfast today. Why should he feel that way over a wax doll? Grandma. And Mom. She looks like she's all twisted up like a spring inside a clock ready to bust loose. That's no way to act over a doll, is it? Grandma deliberated over her bishop, withdrew into herself like an old hermit crab in a shell of lace. There was no body, just your imagination. Forget it. Forget it. She glanced at the child as if he were responsible. Walk light from now on, Sonny. Keep quiet and keep out of the way, and forget it. Someone's got to tell you these things. Don't know why it's always me, but just forget it. They played chess until twilight. Then the house got dark again too quickly. Everybody hurried through supper, and it seemed that everybody went to bed early, too. Johnny listened to the hours chiming out one by one. Someone rapped on his door. Johnny said, "Who is it? Uncle Flinny?" "What do you want, Uncle Flinny?" "Time for your bedtime story, Johnny." "Oh, well, not tonight, please, Uncle Flinny." "Yes, please. This is a very special story. A very extra special bedtime story." Johnny waited then. "I'm tired, Uncle Flinny. Some other time, huh? Not tonight, please." Uncle Flinny went away, and after a while the clock chimed again. It was after 10. More time. After 11. More time. Almost 12. Johnny opened the door. The house was completely asleep. You could tell by the quiet, untouched gleam on the long hall stairs. Clear moonlight pouring through great arches of glass, and no shadow moving. Johnny closed the door behind him. From off somewhere in a quiet land, Grandma breathed heavily in her great four-postered bed. There was a tinkling noise, very faintly, as if bottles were being cautiously rattled behind Cousin William's door. Johnny paused at the staircase. All he had to do would be return to bed and forget about it, believe that it was all a mistake, and there would be no trouble. It would be forgotten, and things would take up where they had been, and things would take up where they'd been a few days ago. Mother would laugh at her parties. Dad would drive back and forth to the office with his thick briefcase. Grandma would sneak her brandy on the side. Cousin William would insert needles into mannequin flesh, and Uncle Flinny would go on forever telling his feverish bedtime stories that meant nothing. Yet it was not so easy as that. Things could not go back now. Only ahead. You can't forget. Dad, his only friend, was a stranger now since the incident. Mother was worse than ever. Her eyes looked like they cried at night. Down under the glitter, she had to live too, and Grandma, she'd drunk 2 bottles instead of 1 bottle of brandy a week. And Cousin Wilhelm, every time he stuck a pin into a mannequin, he'd think of the trunk lady. Blanche, cringe, and start whimpering over his cognac. And she, the lovely dark-haired stranger in the musty trunk, had looked so lonely up there where he'd found her, so apart. There was a bond between them. She was a stranger in the house, and was killed for it. Johnny was a stranger in the house now, too. He wanted to find her again because of that. They were almost brother and sister. She needed finding. She needed to be remembered, not to be forgotten. Johnny went down each step with careful footing. He clung to the banister, sliding his fingers. She would not be in the attic now, nor would she be in any of the upstairs rooms. How could they sleep with her so near to them? Downstairs, perhaps. Somewhere in the accumulated night of the house. Not in the servants' quarters. He had just reached the stair bottom when he heard one of the upstairs doors open very slowly and close. After that, there was not a sound, but quite calmly, someone came and stood at the top of the stairs, looking down. Johnny froze. He leaned against the wall like a shadow. Sweat came out on his face and trickled in the small palms of his hands. He could not see who it was. They just stood there, watching, looking down, silent and waiting. Things had to go on. You can't live in bed and forget. And we'll pause there.